We're back again, press fans, coming to you from Altman Studios in downtown Brentwood, to your ears wherever you are. This is Clocked In with the Press. I'm Jake Menez, here as always with press editor Kyle Szymanski.
Hello.
Today we've got Antioch arrests, a COVID update, and imposed fines for illegal marijuana operations. But before all that, here's a quick word from today's sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Sip and Scoop in downtown Brentwood. Sip and Scoop delivers smiles for miles, sip by sip and scoop by scoop. Gelato, Italian ice, and signature coffee beverages are just a few of the delicious treats on their menu. Stop by Sip and Scoop at 234 Oak Street in downtown Brentwood to get your fix. They're also on DoorDash.
Thanks once again to this week's sponsor. Let's dive in. Kyle, I hear the Brentwood Rotary Club has a new president, Dan Torres. Have you heard about this?
Heard about it. I wrote about it. Dan Torres presided over the first meeting of the 2022-2023 Rotary on July 12th. Recently serving on the Rotary Board of Directors and with other local organizations over the last decade, has given him the experience to help him lead the group that benefits the community, according to a press release.
I thought you were going to say that, which is why I came with a little background information on Brentwood's Rotary Club for our listeners. The Rotary Club of Brentwood was established in 1949 and currently has 95 members who are business owners, government officials, and other residents too. Rotary holds fundraisers to give back to lots of different causes, youth, veterans, and humanitarian projects. Each year, it awards approximately 15,000 scholarships, it provides back-to-school clothes for students, and it supports local scouts, veterans, and other nonprofits and businesses. The organization is all about collaborating and serving on the local and global levels.
When you're right, you're right. It's a big organization, and I'm sure Torres has some big shoes to fill because of it. Luckily, he seems up to the task. He said in a statement that our Brentwood Club has a long history of service and great leadership, and I look forward to working with our members to continue our traditions and also evolve to serve today's community. Rotary is a world-class organization, and it provides a wide array of service opportunities both here and ahead so that our members can support and get involved in whatever they are passionate about.
Hey, best of luck to Dan. I know in the past he served as president of the Brentwood Chamber of Commerce, Brentwood Elementary Parents Club, and Delta Networking Partners, so clearly he's a community-minded guy, and I'm sure this role is going to be a natural fit for him. In keeping with the theme of service organizations, the next story I wanted to bring to the table today is about the Oakley Senior Citizens Food Line Distribution. Over a dozen senior members and volunteers are helping to unload and categorize pallets of food for those in need. On Thursday mornings, an extensive line forms around the block trailing from 215 2nd Street right there in Oakley, long before the doors open at 1 p.m. Boxes upon boxes filled with food are quickly left barren, a sign of a good deed done for members and volunteers.
That's right, Jake. This food distribution is just one of several ways Oakley seniors stay active and involved in the community. Oakley Senior Citizens' mission is to provide services and programs that encourage social connection, healthy aging, and well-being. A licensed nonprofit organization, they originally opened a food line to fill the gap left when Antioch's food line disbanded.
The truckloads of food that these seniors are offloading get delivered by the Food Bank of Contra Costa, if you didn't know that, Kyle, and they're filled with fresh fruit, vegetables, and baked goods. Not to mention non-perishable boxes of dry goods, canned foods. Look, I could keep listing these things, Kyle, but I skipped breakfast today, and I don't want listeners to hear my stomach growling.
I can hear it right now, Jake, but I do want to tell you that donation sources like the City of Oakley and the anonymous donors also go towards general building maintenance and necessary repairs. Funding can be hard to come by at times, but Vice President Tim Lear remains tenacious in his efforts to help others and keep his community active. He said in a statement that we help everybody. Anyone who wants to get food in our line is welcome. I don't care if you're rich or poor. If you're in line and you need food, you take it. I give to everybody. And Jake, why don't you go get some food?
I will say, Kyle, my last job was unloading pallets of wine for a retailer, and it's amazing how difficult that is, so props to these seniors for it. Especially because the early pandemic created so many challenges for the center's mission. Membership dropped from over 400 to less than 300 in a short period, while the public need for food reached an all-time high as people became unemployed. Instead of laying low in the early days of the pandemic, Lear and center members doubled down in their efforts to help the community when it needed them the most. Keeping in line with the county's sanitary and distancing guidelines, they threw on their masks and began temporarily holding 2 food lines a week.
Community engagement and service do not end when the food runs out. With a full weekly activity roster, the Senior Activity Center is an excellent hub for programs that help seniors live full lives. The entryway walls are lined with dozens of pamphlets for mobility programs, social services, senior legal services, and the like. Members and family attend health and safety fairs, cane defense classes, exercise classes, bunco games, fiber arts group, and more.
Not to mention, Kyle, on the first Saturday of each month, the center hosts Trinkets and Treasures, an aptly named public flea market. People of any age can come buy or sell their used or handmade goods. It's like Etsy in person. As Christmas nears, the market's popularity grows even more, so much so that they hold it bi-weekly. Table vendors sell plants, handmade jewelry, wreaths, purses, and vintage goods. Customers come in droves looking for personal gifts for their loved ones they can't find at any other store. And on Wednesdays, the Costa Cafe, which is a local Oakley restaurant, caters hot meals to the center at a suggested rate of $3 a meal for seniors and $6 a meal for those under the age of 50. They also provide low-cost frozen meal plans and will never turn down seniors for inability to pay. Lear also works with 3 local McDonald's that donate frozen leftover food, providing seniors with free sausage, biscuits, and eggs to take home. When the building's empty, Oakley's 4-H Club, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, and the Veterans Club all use it for routine meetings.
Vice President Lear and Project Coordinator James Freitas remind potential volunteers that all ages are welcome to visit. If you want to volunteer for the food line distribution or stop by for lunch, check them out on Facebook or call the front desk at 925-626-7223.
Great organization, really multifaceted. I think volunteering would be a great thing. We're going to jump to Antioch for a moment, Kyle. 1 person died and 2 others were injured in a 2-vehicle crash near James Donlan Boulevard and Contra Loma Boulevard on July 14th. Police arrived on the scene at 10:23 a.m. after receiving reports of a car fire, according to a statement they made later that afternoon. Police said in the statement that the vehicle hit a tree, then crashed into another vehicle traveling the same direction. The crash caused one of the cars to catch fire, and one of the drivers died as a result of injuries sustained in the crash. The other driver and a passenger were treated for minor injuries. The person who died in the crash was a man in his 20s, but was not identified by police. Both cars were seen traveling down James Donlan Boulevard prior to the crash at a, quote, high rate of speed based on witness statements, authorities said.
And our condolences to everyone involved. All right, Jake, let's move into sports, shall we? Paul Blackburn was in the MLB All-Star Game. Jake, did you watch the game?
I saw a little bit of the game, but I think what happened before the game was more interesting.
Absolutely. But Heritage High alum Paul Blackburn, now member of the Oakland A's, for those who don't know, had a near-perfect one-inning appearance in the Major League Baseball All-Star Game on Tuesday night in Los Angeles. Blackburn tossed a scoreless 4th inning, getting Trey Turner to pop out before Wilson Contreras reached base on an error. Blackburn finished up the frame by forcing future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols to fly out and Bay Area foe Jock Peterson of the San Francisco Giants to strike out. Blackburn, who was drafted out of high school in 2012, was making his first appearance in the game. And Jake, you mentioned what happened before the game. So for those who were unaware, the A's were playing in Houston right before the All-Star Game. Well, the Oakland A's only had one representative in the All-Star Game, so they said, hey, Paul, jump on a, commercial airline to get there. We'll pay for it. And the Astros said, hold on, you're not flying commercial on our watch. So they allowed him to jump on their chartered plane for a nice little ride from Houston to Los Angeles, where the All-Star Game was played.
I think, great sportsmanship to let him hop on that plane.
All right, let's turn to cornhole. Liberty High School junior Vincent Frisch has been doing big things in the game. In April, he won the California West Conference Championship, and in July, he won the California State Championship. The conference championship featured 128 players. There, he went undefeated. In the California State Championship, Frisch was only one of 64 competitors. He did lose a match, but he still came out on top. And he competes with the Pacific Coast Cornhole based in Pleasanton, but he also competes with more local clubs like the Brentwood Bombers. It was an event when someone from the Pacific Coast Cornhole noticed how good Frisch was and approached his father, Travis. And coming up next for him is the Spencer McKenzie Throwdown in August. It is the biggest tournament in the world with 1,000 teams and a total pot of up to $400,000. So good luck to him.
Kyle, I think you're the biggest advocate for cornhole that I know of. You're always talking about it.
It's a good game, and it's on the rise. You know what else is on the rise? Joe Mixon's fandom. An East County football player who became an NFL star returned to his roots this week to teach and inspire the next generation of football players. Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon, who starred for Freedom High School from 2011 to 2013, hosted a youth football camp at Heritage High School. In addition to interacting with youngsters and participating in drills with them, Mixon signed autographs. And long before his NFL days, Mixon was on the Freedom High School gridiron. In his 3 years for the Falcons varsity team, he ran for 4,281 yards and 57 touchdowns. And after graduating from Freedom in 2014, Mixon went to the University of Oklahoma. He was drafted by the Bengals in the second round in 2017, and in 5 NFL seasons, he's rushed for 4,564 yards and 33 touchdowns, along with pulling in 171 receptions for 1,322 yards and 8 touchdowns. Mixon was not the only NFL star on the field that day. He was assisted at the camp by professional stars, including Deer Valley alum and current Chicago Bear wide receiver Simba Webster, Simba's brother Cincy Webster, a Deer Valley alum and current Green Bay Packers offensive lineman George Moore, and current USC coach Will Johnson.
I don't know if you remember this, Kyle, but a few months ago, you and I had actually spoken to Coach Kevin Hartwig from Heritage about Joe Mixon shortly after the Super Bowl on this very podcast.
That was a great conversation for people who missed that. They should go back and listen to it. All right, let's turn to softball. The Brentwood Pony Softball Bronco Division California Bears are the champions of the inaugural season. The squad finished the season with a 16-4-1 record, including the playoffs. The team wrote in a statement that it wants to thank the league commissioners, coaches, families, and most importantly, the kids for a great first season.
Can't ask for more than that.
Speaking of Kevin Hartwig, who's an assistant for the Heritage High School football team, that team is enjoying some early summer success. With the start of practices nearing and the regular season not far behind that, Heritage High School's football team is building a lot of positive momentum. The momentum has come via successful 7-on-7 summer camps. The first one of those was at Laney College. In that tournament, the Patriots went 3-1 over 4 games. What's even more impressive, Kevin Hartwig, who we had on this podcast, Jake, like you mentioned, had COVID. And during that same tournament, their head coach, Dave Fogelstrom, came down with a kidney stone. So both were unable to coach the team, but the assistants picked up the slack. Heritage kept that momentum going 3 weeks later when they went to the De La Salle tournament. There, the Patriots improved upon their finish at Laney, going to perfect 4-0. The quarterback situation at Heritage is unsettled. Austin Peters and Dede Bose are battling for the starting role, but whoever gets that starting role will have a bunch of talented wide receivers to throw to, including Jeremiah Ruffin, Devin Rivers, Tyler Sunga, and Brandon McNamara. And if you don't remember, guys, the Heritage team went 5-5 in 2021, but that was a very young team. I understand from early reports that this team is really buying into what Fogelstrom is selling, and they are working very hard in the weight room, so it's going to pay off when they hit the field. Just wait. That's it for sports, but listeners should stick around, right, Jake?
Absolutely. We've got a few more stories coming up for them. We've got Antioch arrests, a COVID update, and marijuana penalties all coming their way. But first, quick word from our sponsor. While you're listening to that, guys, why don't you give us a like, leave a comment, leave a review, depending on what platform you're listening on. Let us know what you think of these stories. Until then, don't touch that dial.
Today's episode of Clocked In with the Press is brought to you by our friends at Sip and Scoop in downtown Brentwood. Sip and Scoop started out as a food truck, serving coffee, hot cocoa, and desserts on the go, but the demand was so high that they had to open a shop at 234 Oak Street. Here at Clocked In, we love Sip and Scoop. They're just a few doors down from our offices, and we're there often enough that they know our names and orders. It's like Cheers, but better, because there's dessert. Try their cold brew coffee, or choose a latte or Americano for a classic coffee drink that can't be beat. And we haven't even talked about their breakfast sandwiches and avocado toast. Have I mentioned the root beer floats and the iced lemonades? Those are my personal favorites. Okay, obviously, I could talk about food all day, but here's the point. You gotta go to Sip and Scoop. Visit them at 234 Oak Street in downtown Brentwood, or have Sip and Scoop brought to you wherever you are by DoorDash. Having an event? Let Sip and Scoop cater it. Give them a call at 925-684-7710 to find out more.
Thank you very much to our sponsor. Antioch police, along with state and federal officials, arrested 23 people last week on felony warrants, including the seizure of 4 firearms and illegal narcotics in an effort to make Antioch and surrounding areas safer. And that's according to a press release.
So that operation, Kyle, it's formally known as the Violent Crime Reduction Operation, but Mayor Lamar Thorpe's been calling it the Operation We're Not Messing Around. It's an effort that identifies people who have had active felony warrants for violent crimes, such as homicide, assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault, and so on. The list included 5 arrests, each for homicide and assault with a deadly weapon, 2 for robbery with a firearm, and 1 each for felony possession, assault, and sexual assault.
There were also 5 parole, warrant, or probation arrests, 2 for handguns, and 1 each for aiding an escape, stolen vehicle, drug sales, sawed-off shotguns, bolt-action rifle, and fentanyl of 20 grams or more, according to a press release. And here's a quote from Lieutenant John Fortner. We were able to get some extremely violent people off the streets. These people either were living in Antioch or committing most of the crimes in Antioch. The city is safer because of this.
Next up, Kyle, is one of the stories that I worked on this week. Brentwood City Council decided unanimously 4-0 to limit the dollar amount residents can contribute to local elections. They chose to limit contributions to $500 per person per candidate at the July 12th council meeting. Vice Mayor Johnny Rodriguez was absent.
You already know this, Jake, but listeners might not know that the state law allows cities to set up their own campaign contribution limits. And that's according to City Attorney Damian Brower. If cities do not opt to do so, they can default to the state limit of $4,900, which is exactly what Brentwood had been doing until the law was passed.
So I watch all these council meetings, Kyle, when I'm writing the articles, and at this meeting, Brower gave a presentation at the meeting to educate the council and the public on the new ordinances that were being drafted. They did both an urgency ordinance and a non-urgency ordinance that had the exact same language that would change the municipal code in the exact same way. The reason for the urgency ordinance was to get the language in the code prior to the District 2 and District 4 elections that are happening in November.
Jake, the nomination period for the district elections opened on July 18th. And according to Brower, a non-urgency ordinance takes effect in 30 days. So the urgency ordinance would be used to enact changes to campaign contributions while waiting for the other ordinance to take effect. At that time, the urgency ordinance would automatically be repealed and replaced by the other one.
And if you remember correctly, Kyle, we talked about this on the podcast maybe about a month ago, and that's because the campaign finance reform had first been brought up as part of the council's June 14th meeting. And at that meeting, they voted 3-0 because both Joe Bryant and Johnny Rodriguez were absent from it. But they voted 3-0 to direct staff to look into drafting an ordinance that was then brought up at this most recent meeting. In addition to limiting the amount of money that an individual can donate to a campaign, the new ordinance also earmarks $25,000 for the general fund in order to enforce the limits. In order to do that, the city is going to retain Gary Winnick of the Kosman Law Group as a third-party enforcer. Brower at the meeting described Winnick as, quote, an expert on campaign finance and election issues. Winnick had previously served 5 years as the chief of the Enforcement Division of the California Fair Political Practice Commission. Why don't you tell listeners what the FPPC is, Kyle?
You got it, Jake. The FPPC is a 5-member, independent, nonpartisan commission that has primary responsibility for the impartial and effective administration of the Political Reform Act. The Political Reform Act, passed in the wake of the Watergate scandal in the 1970s, is meant to regulate campaign financing, lobbying, governmental ethics, and conflicts of interest.
That's exactly why you're my facts guy, Kyle. It wasn't made clear at the meeting, though, how campaign contribution limits were going to be enforced. That still needs to be seen. Brower proposed that the third-party enforcer, that would be Winnick in this case, would determine if violations would result in a citation, civil action, or potentially criminal prosecution through the district attorney's office. Next up was Melissa's big story. She's not on the podcast today to talk about it, so we'll talk about it instead. But it's been 6 years since California passed Proposition 64. That's the one that legalized recreational marijuana use. However, illegal cultivation remains an issue in some cities, including Brentwood. State cannabis regulations allow residents to grow up to 6 plants for personal use. That's going to be some important context for what we're talking about here. Because since 2017, Brentwood has regulated cannabis activity in the city and incorporated by the requirements of the state law into its municipal code, allowing the city to levy administrative citation fines for cannabis violations of cultivation of more than 6 plants.
The Brentwood Municipal Code was unclear on whether administrative citations may be issued on a per-property or per-plant basis, prompting the council to approve their new ordinance, which clarifies that an administrative fine can be placed on each cannabis plant cultivated over the number of plants allowed by state law.
So that would mean if your house has 8 plants, they're not going to fine you once because it's one house with 8 plants. They're going to fine you for the 7th plant and the 8th plant. Brentwood Police Lieutenant Walter Ogrodnik told the Santa Cruz Sentinel that the city had seen upward of 15 grow houses in the past 18 months, with larger homes, especially 3-car garage homes, being attractive for such operations. This degree of illegal cannabis cultivation poses significant health and safety risks to residents and is likely part of a larger criminal network, the city's press release said.
Meanwhile, in Antioch, illegal cultivation, while not completely absent, has been less of a problem. Antioch Interim Police Chief Steve Ford also spoke to the Sentinel and said his city hasn't seen any illegal grow houses in the last year. An illegal warehouse grow operation was discovered months ago, which resulted in code enforcement officers imposing sanctions and the destruction of the plants. It is worth mentioning that Antioch has several licensed dispensaries within its city limits.
That's right, Kyle. Ford even said, quote, as crazy as it sounds, I'd like to think that the availability of dispensaries has helped mitigate the need for people to want to try and erect a weed house or weed grow because they don't have to do that. He did, however, note that black market sales continue.
Let's bring this story back to Brentwood, though. To combat illegal grows, the Brentwood City Council approved a new ordinance at its meeting on July 12th, clarifying that administrative fines can be placed daily on each cannabis plant cultivated over the number of plants allowed by state law. Citations are $100 per plant for the first violation, $200 per plant for the second, and $500 per plant for the third and any subsequent violations. Illegal grows remain an issue largely due to the prohibitive costs that can accompany legitimizing an illegal grow. and that's according to some studies. The high cost of licensing a legal cannabis business can include permits and state and local licensing fees, required testing for residential solvents, chemicals, and pesticides in certified labs, and substantial taxation. Cultivators pay a variable tax based on the weight and type of cannabis when selling to distributors. Retailers pay a 15% excise tax on the purchases from distributors. And according to a report from the Cato Institute, legal sales account for only 20-25% of total sales in the state, while unlicensed businesses and dispensaries have become commonplace, resulting in nearly $8 billion in annual underground sales.
A January letter from cannabis industry professionals encouraged State Senator Tony G. Atkins, State Representative Anthony Rendon, and Governor Gavin Newsom to address some of the tax and regulation concerns in the 2022-2023 budget. The letter states, Prop 64 was not passed simply to raise tax revenue, but to end the illicit market, protect public health and safety, and create an accountable legal industry. Yet today, 4 years after the start of legal sales, our industry is collapsing and our global leadership and legacy are at the brink of disappearing forever. On June 30th, Newsom signed legislation implementing that state budget, part of which included the indefinite suspension of the cultivation tax and freezing the excise tax at 15% for several years. Kyle, how about you tell them the other items on the cannabis tax reform trailer bill?
They're going to move excise tax collection and remittance to retail in 2023 to establish a single point of collection and remittance and simplify the tax requirements for the entire cannabis supply chain, allow eligible equity retailers to keep a percentage of the excise tax they collect, create new tax credits for equity licenses in some cannabis businesses with stronger labor standards, strengthen labor peace requirements, protect programs funded by cannabis taxes by allocating $150 million general fund allocation to make up for the potential lost revenue, make illegal cannabis businesses liable for all unpaid taxes, and allow bad actors to be held personally liable for tax evasion. Another factor that contributes to the growth of the illicit market is the power local municipalities have to shut out local cannabis operations in their jurisdiction, according to a 2021 article in Politico. This includes cultivation, brick-and-mortar dispensaries, and delivery services. Brentwood is one of many California cities that prohibits the cannabis industry within city limits, recreational or medical. The updated Brentwood ordinance states the following. Each and every marijuana plant cultivated in excess of the number of plants allowed under the section shall be a separate offense, and each such plant subject to a separate administrative citation fine under Chapter 1.24 of the Municipal Code. Each and every day a violation is maintained, caused, aided, abetted, concealed, suffered, or permitted is a separate offense.
I want to round this off, Kyle, with a quote from Mayor Joel Bryant. Mayor Bryant said, quote, Public safety is the top priority for the city of Brentwood, and we will not tolerate illegal criminal activity. This new ordinance will allow staff to enforce fines and deter criminal networks from setting up illegal marijuana grows in our community. Finally, Kyle, let's talk COVID for our last story. With the new COVID-19 variant spreading, Contra Costa residents may be wondering how the county is handling the spread of the virus and how people can continue to stay safe with this new variant on the rise. Health officials are calling it more contagious than the previous Omicron variants. The Contra Costa County Coronavirus Tracking website says that there are 6,354 current cases in the past 14 days out of the county's total population of 1.1 million people. However, the health service officials warn that the reported case numbers are most likely lower than the actual number of residents with COVID-19 because the at-home testing is not reported to officials. So you may be at home, you may have tested positive and stayed home from work that week, but the government doesn't know that you did that, so it won't reflect in those numbers. The current fully vaccinated rate in the county is 83% according to the county's website, and 56% of people are fully boosted.
While cases are not as high as they were earlier in the year, there still is an upward trend in positive cases, officials said. At its height last January, Contra Costa County was seeing almost 2,800 positive cases a day. As of July 3rd, Contra Costa County is reporting about 523 cases per day. These numbers are still lower than the spike seen last winter, with the 7-day average in January of 2021 being about 700 cases per day.
And that's countrywide. We're seeing similar trends in many parts of the country. California is not an outlier in that regards. Even to the point where some California counties are considering reinstating their mask mandates to try and curb the spread of the variant. Across the state, 35 of California's 58 counties have reached the CDC's high-risk COVID-19 threshold of 10 hospitalizations per 100,000 residents, according to WebMD. California's current 7-day positive test rate is 16.9%, which is the highest rate that it's been since the peak of 21% during the first wave of Omicron. That's according to Deadline.com.
And here's a quote from Contra Costa County Health spokesman Brittany Goldman. Contra Costa County Health currently has no plans to reinstate a mask mandate. We carefully monitor transmission and hospitalization data, but do not employ hard triggers to make decisions about health orders.
And you can take a quick look at the Contra Costa County Health website, their coronavirus portal, and it looks like the unvaccinated still make up the highest percentage of those infected with the virus. The cities with the highest case numbers in Contra Costa include Richmond, Antioch, Concord, Pittsburgh, and Brentwood. Kyle can give you some stats. The number of the cases over the last 14 days is as follows. Richmond, 835 people. Antioch, 777. Concord, 758. Pittsburgh, 447. And Brentwood, 452.
According to Goldman, Contra Costa County Health strongly recommends wearing high-quality masks in public areas, especially while indoors. It's also important for people to get vaccinated and stay up to date with boosters.
Especially with events, restaurants, and entertainment areas reopening without restrictions. It just is creating a breeding ground for something like that. It's important for people to continue to stay vigilant and protect themselves from the virus, health officials have reiterated over and over again. Wearing a high-quality mask, like you said, washing and sanitizing your hands regularly, and reporting positive COVID tests are all ways to keep Contra Costa County residents safe. That's all I've got for the news, Kyle. What have you got for weekend events?
Well, we have some plays coming up. Ghostlight Theater Ensemble presents the Wizard of Oz Youth Edition this weekend. There are 2 back-to-back performances that will be going on at Liberty High School, and that's at 852nd Street in Brentwood on Saturday, July 23rd. Cast A will perform at 2 p.m., followed by Cast B at 6 p.m. Tickets are around $15, so if you want to visit, go to ghostlight.org/tickets. Also, for those who don't want to pay, Nosotros play at the Nick Rodriguez Center is going on. The Monuments Impact Homes Art Project is hosting Nosotros, a free play at the Nick Rodriguez Center in Antioch on July 23rd at 2 and 5:30 p.m. The Nick Rodriguez Center is at 213 F Street in Antioch. And Jake, before we go, let's remind our listeners to not forget about our special section. It's all about health, beauty, and fitness. We have stories on skincare, what fitness mistakes to avoid, and even a story on the gift of surrogacy.
That's it for today's episode of Clocked In with the Press. We appreciate you taking the time to listen in, and we look forward to speaking with you in future episodes. If you'd like to read more news stories from East Contra Costa County, you can do so on our website at www.thepress.net or through our Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. Be sure to tune in again next week for all your local news and sports highlights. And before then, on Tuesday, Melissa's going to sit down with Majda Medizada, the interim chancellor for the Contra Costa Community College District. As always, contact us with your thoughts on this episode or any other before it by emailing podcasts@brownpress.com. But that's all I've got for today. Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you next time. This is Jake.
And Kyle.
Clocking out.
Thanks again to this week's sponsor, Sip and Scoop. Remember that feeling of hearing the ice cream truck coming down the street as a kid? Bring back that feeling by visiting Sip and Scoop. They started out as a truck too, and now they have a brick and mortar shop right here in Brentwood, so you don't have to chase them down the block. Sip and Scoop has all kinds of high-quality desserts to satisfy any sweet tooth. Gelato, root beer floats, and iced coffees are just a few of my favorites. And the whole menu is available to go on DoorDash. Stop by their shop in downtown Brentwood and get your scoop on.